Hello, my name is Craig Blomberg, and I've been privileged to have a new translation of my book, Neither Poverty Nor Riches, available in Brazil in Portuguese. What does the Bible teach about money, personal possessions, and stewardship? What would happen if I read the entire scripture from Genesis to Revelation and watched just for anything that might be relevant to help answer those questions? I would discover that money in itself is a good thing. It's part of what God created, and God created all things good. There are times, especially in the Old Testament, when He blesses obedient people with riches. But I would discover also that in a world corrupted by the fall, money can seduce us. Material possessions can be a powerful incentive to encourage us to sin and to go away from God. I would discover examples of very wicked, wealthy people, especially in the Old Testament, but in the New as well. What's the solution to this twofold power of wealth? To be something very good, to be used for God's purposes, or to be something that seduces us to sin? I submit that what we see in every stage of the Old and New Testament is that generous giving to the Lord's work, particularly to help the poor and the marginalized, the outcast, those experiencing injustice of some kind, to those who have any kind of surplus possessions, to give generously and even sacrificially to help bring people to the Lord, to fund the ministries of the church, yes, but especially to help those physically and spiritually who are neediest in our world, to give generously. What percentage does this add up to? Well, some people like to say it's a tithe, it's 10%, and they quote Old Testament texts. The problem is, the Old Testament tithe had 3 parts to it, and in total there were 23 1/3% tithe. Unless you're prepared to give that much, you're not following the Old Testament. No, the New Testament doesn't command a tithe, it commands generosity, sacrifice. If I only make a small amount of money, 10% may be too much of a burden for me to give. It may make me irresponsible toward some of my other needs and people that I'm responsible for. If I am a wealthy person, 10% may not be nearly enough. It can hardly be called a sacrifice. It varies from each person to the next, from each circumstance in life to the next. But there is a golden mean that Paul articulates in 2 Corinthians 8:13-15, when he says, I'm not trying to make others rich and make you poor, but that there be equality, or equity, or fairness would be another way of saying that. Our surplus helps to meet other people's needs, and if it's reversed, other people's surplus will help meet our needs. If this interests you at all, maybe even if it doesn't, it should. I invite you to look at my book, Neither Poverty Nor Riches.